How would you deal with President Trump? What are your tactics that you think would be effective for someone like him?
All right, there's a two part to this. First of all, we're dealing with someone who's a bully.
What? You want to say something? You say nothing? Who said that? You got something to say?
I didn't say corrupted bastard, but I
Is that
said...
what you said?
No, I did not
Who
say
said
that.
it? Who said it?
Somebody behind me said that.
Was it me? Was it you? No. You sure? If it was me, I'd admit it, buddy. Was it you or not?
And bullies only understand one thing, that is strength. And Hamilton knows something about being in a fight. Hamilton's a scrappy town. They know what it's like. You got to fight back. That's for sure. But we can't control what he's going to do. We got to fight back. We got to defend our country. But we also have to look at what we can do for our country. And that's why I'm saying if we're going to use our federal government to build projects, let's massively build projects using 100% Canadian steel. Why are we using other steel for projects in our country when we can build it here in our country? We can put Canadian workers to work. That's what I'm proposing today. If we're going to build hospitals, roads, bridges, and we need to, if we're going to build public transport, if we're going to build massive infrastructure projects, let's use 100% Canadian steel. Let's ensure that these workers have jobs in Canada supported by a government that puts workers first. That's our vision.
Finally!
We can't control what Trump's going to do. We can fight back, and we absolutely are ready to do that. But we got to be defiant in building up a country that we are proud of. And to do that, let's build Canadian, buy Canadian, support Canadian workers.
And Jagmeet, do you know right now how much steel in Canada is not Canadian steel that's being currently used?
Well, there's actually no requirement right now. When there are projects being built with taxpayer dollars, there's no real requirement that ensures that it's going to be all Canadian content. Many projects we see federal money going to foreign countries, foreign companies. We're not actually seeing a strong requirement that if we're building a bridge, if we're building roads, if we're building infrastructure, that all that content is Canadian. That's not something that any other party is proposing.
Are you serious?
We're saying let's use 100% Canadian steel in every project. Let's make that a requirement. If we're going to work with provinces to build projects, which we absolutely should, let's encourage them to also have a requirement that every piece, every part of steel that's used is 100% Canadian. Imagine the type of economy we could build if we were using Canadian steel and Canadian workers to build our country. Imagine the type of country we could build together. That's what I'm envisioning, where we are using the power of our country to build a better country.
Right.
Talking about building things like hospitals, roads, bridges. One thing I haven't heard you mention that uses a lot of steel is pipelines. That there's lots of talk about with the tariff threat. Does Canada relook at the case for an east-to-west pipeline for something like natural gas? What would the NDP do on that front?
Well, we absolutely need to build infrastructure east-west. And what I'm proposing is an east-west energy grid. We've got incredible supplies of low-cost, cheap electricity that's clean electricity, but we're not connected between the provinces. Imagine the climate we could create, the business climate, the manufacturing climate we could create across the country if we connected the cheap, low-cost, cheap, clean electricity from jurisdictions like Manitoba, like BC and Quebec, and connected that across the country. Imagine the amount of jobs we could create. We built an east-west energy grid that connected our country. That's a project that would put steel workers to work, electricians to work, a host of jobs, and it would build up a more resilient country. We've heard, and I went to Germany, spoke with the German government. They want our energy. They want clean energy. So let's build clean energy in our country. That's a massive infrastructure project. That's lots of steel. That's lots of jobs. And that stays in our country. That builds up our country.
So is that a no to the idea of an NDP government approving an east-west pipeline?
No, that's just my priority. My priority is we need a big, massive public infrastructure project, and I'd like to see an east-west energy grid. But when it comes to public projects around energy, we have a couple of criteria that we look at. These are important criteria. We want to make sure, one, it's something that the community wants in their community, so social acceptability. We want to make sure it's a project that actually benefits workers. So we want to see a clear plan that creates jobs in communities that benefits Canadian workers. We want to make sure that we meet our environmental requirements, so we're not damaging or hurting the environment. And finally, we want to make sure we work with Indigenous communities to make these projects happen. But yeah, we're open to projects if they make those criteria. The project I'm really focused on and excited about is an east-west energy grid. But we're open to other projects as well.
Nous allons maintenant à Émilie Bergeron. We will now go to Mackenzie Gray with Global. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Singh. You've talked extensively about how there'll be, in your estimation, an election in March, yet you guys have only roughly 140 candidates nominated so far. What's taking so long for the NDP to get a full slate of candidates in place?
We'll be ready, election ready, when the election comes. We're well on track to achieve that. We have hit all of our targets, and we'll be ready for an election. And that election is going to be important for folks out there. You're seeing what we're focused on. We want workers first. We want to support you and your family. The Conservatives want to cut, and it's going to cost you. And the Liberals let you down. And people tell me they don't want to give them another shot. It's an important election. We'll be ready to fight it.
Provincially, we've seen an NDP candidate drop out and say, back the Liberal candidate. They're the best person to be able to beat the Conservatives in our riding. At a federal level, I'm sure there's many progressives who would like the idea of voting for you, but they look at the polls and see that the Liberals are pulling ahead. Will you commit to running a full slate of candidates across the country and run against the Liberals in every riding?
Yes, we'll have a full slate of candidates. And I can tell you, I've been in government, in elected official, in some of the most difficult times. And during the pandemic, when there was just 25 of us, we were able to fight for the things that Canadians needed. If we were not there, if New Democrats were not there, people weren't going to get the help that they needed. And now in this last minority government, everything that we were able to get done that made people's lives better, protections for workers, funding for pharmacare, dental care for seniors, only happened because of New Democrats. We have seen that governments do not act and can't get things done unless more New Democrats are elected.
No, not this time. It's totally made up.
Elect more of us, and more will be done for working people. Today, we talked about a plan to put workers first, to build Canadian infrastructure using Canadian steel. That's what you get with a Canadian, that's what you get with New Democrats in power.